So yes, the Diablo 4 dev team recently held an event open to a select few, but it was streamed, and Rod Ferguson himself sat in and answered some burning questions about future updates, an interesting way to play the game, and much more. And what was that big tease around the Butcher for Diablo 4? Well, looks like today we finally have our answer, and it's definitely not what you'd expect. Plus, it's likely we'll be seeing a lot more from Diablo 4 later this year. I'll explain why in a moment. Also, a Necromancer playthrough has revealed something very strange indeed, but we need to talk about it. And is Diablo 4 shooting itself in the foot by not including these two very important quality of life features at launch? So yeah, a lot to dive into today. So yeah, you guys may remember yesterday they teased this right here, that the Butcher has something he'd like to share with you on 5/19/23. Well, today we definitely have an idea of what that is exactly, and trust me, it's not what you expect at all. Check it out. It says billions of demons were slain during the Diablo 4 betas. Now it's time to drink what you've killed. The Butcher is serving up 100% vegan, by the way, demon milkshakes tomorrow, 5/19. Like this tweet to be reminded when it's available for delivery. And Rod Ferguson did actually tweet this out right here. It says, the world is not ready for the Butcher's demon milkshake. And if we scroll down, we get a look at this thing. It looks absolutely disgusting. Disgustingly delicious, that is. Especially to you Necromancer fans. But yeah, I could see myself playing as a Necromancer battling against the Butcher, slurping on a demon meat shake. Why not? But yeah, let's get into some more news about what's happening later in the year, because yes, Diablo 4 is most likely going to be making a bigger appearance then, and we might be hearing more about post-launch content because of this right here. Save the date, BlizzCon is coming November 3rd through the 4th. See you there. So yes, I would definitely expect Blizzard to show up with Diablo 4 and most likely be talking about what's happening with future seasons. I don't know if we're going to get news about the expansion during that time. I think that might be a little bit early, asking for too much. But yeah, they probably will be talking about seasons, feedback related to seasons, and what they're doing with the future of Diablo 4. Because they are very much about communicating. It is amazing what they've done with communication. All right, so we have some questions for the dev team and some responses from the dev team. Let's go to Twitter. So it says this. Hey, Adam, firstly, thanks for the great game. Secondly, do you know if there will be skins for minions? Now, the reply from Adam Fletcher of Blizzard says, nothing for now on that. The for now part is very key to me. I can hold out hope because I personally would love to see further customization options for the minions, for your skellies. Even, of course, the Golem could potentially get skins. That would be really, really cool to see. This is something that I would love to have for my Necromancer. All right, next up, we have this one right here from Sean McBride, who says, haven't seen a clear answer on this one yet. At launch, are the world bosses going to be on a set schedule, or are they available all the time? If scheduled, I'm also curious to know what the intervals will be. And the response is this. There will be spawn times, but they will vary. So yeah, previously what they also said is that they want this spawn timer for the world bosses to be very friendly to everyone globally. So you don't have to worry about time zones. You don't have to worry about like waking up at 2 a.m. at nighttime to catch the world boss if you're, say, in Australia versus if you're in the United States. So that's the good news about the world boss spawn times, is they definitely want it to be friendly to everyone to make sure that you have a chance. But yeah, we got to get into those new details from Rod Ferguson himself, because yes, there was a recent event held where a select few were flown out to basically discuss Diablo 4 and celebrate its impending arrival. But yes, this was also streamed by Riker, and I sat in on the stream and I got to write down and jot down all the answers from Rod Ferguson for you also. Let's go ahead and take a look-see what was said. So yes, first and foremost, says this right here, Rod confirms that you can do acts in the story out of order if you really went out of your way. For example, the Act 1 quest is closer to you than the Act 3 quest, but if you are determined, you can find the start of the Act 3 quest line. It'll be easier to track the story in chronological order though, just follow the quest lines closer to each other. So yeah, you don't have to worry about everything being all jumbled and getting out of order. It is very easy to track the actual story from beginning to end. But apparently, if you really, really wanted to, you can go out and seek out like Act 3, and start that quest line. Next up, we have this one right here. It says, what's nice about the world scaling is you'll be able to return to even the prologue area and be offered groups of enemies that match your current level. This is really cool because it means that previously explored areas aren't worthless. I cannot stand when games do that, where you just don't want or have any reason to revisit a really cool area that you love, you know? In this game, it seems like they're tapping into that and know that, hey, perhaps players actually want to re-engage in this area because we built this world and we want them to enjoy it the way they want to enjoy it. Furthermore, says, however, capstone dungeon bosses are at a very specific level. They don't scale with you, so if you can't beat them, you'll need to come back and try again. It's more of that Souls-like mentality, Elden Ring, you know, to really gear up. And we've heard complaints about world bosses, particularly Ashava, that she was just too difficult. Well, that's meant to be. It's supposed to be on purpose. They want different types of gameplay styles between facing off against, you know, regular enemies that you see here in dungeons versus facing off against a boss in a dungeon or ultimately a world boss. It needs to feel unique. Next up, we have this right here. After they get comfortable with the balance of the game, they'll most likely get into leaderboards and post-game reports. They don't want to rush them, and they want to put more effort into the design of them. Rod says if he was a betting person, you could potentially expect leaderboards to appear starting in Season 3. But he said, you know, don't hold him to it too much. He's just saying that. Of course, this is at a bar where everyone's loosely talking, but he did say this on stream. He was aware that he was being streamed. But yeah, they're going to try to attempt to get leaderboards in Season 3 at the earliest. Alright, so next up we have, when it comes to updates, especially minor updates to seasons, expect it to take a season to get those potential fixes. 2 seasons are being made simultaneously, usually to keep up with demand, so getting fresh updates into the next season right away is the challenge. This doesn't include things like balance updates or major needed fixes. It appears they want those to be very quickly implemented into the game. It's any specific changes to seasons that may take one seasonal rotation after a season is released or completed to see feedback implemented. So yeah, brace yourselves for some patches. I imagine there's going to be a few right after the game releases to address some balance issues. Alright, so let's keep going, shall we? He also mentioned how he went on a Korean marketing tour, and the Koreans are extremely competitive and want to be the first to beat the story. He discourages rushing through the story, and for the first playthrough, to really sit back and really take it all in and enjoy it. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. You know, I know YouTube is such a competitive environment. Everyone's trying to rush to the end to level 100. I really want to sit back, relax, and enjoy the story, to be honest with you all. So I'm going to try my best to attempt to do just that. Now, next up, we have this post right here. This is absolutely fascinating. Check it out. It says this: I'm disappointed in Necromancer behavior in campaign. Now, when I click to see the spoiler here, it just deals with the actual story arc that we experienced during the beta. So if you're through that, this is not going to be a spoiler. But yeah, I did this just in case some of you have not seen this. So I'm going to click it. You've been warned. All right, so it says this: my biggest issue with Necro during the beta was not nerfs. It was lack of common sense in his actions as a character during the campaign. So at one point, I find out that the dungeon that I explored right now is Bunker of Rothma. And how does my literal priest of Rothma react to this? To the idea that he can meet the creator of his order, his Necro Jesus? He does not mind at all. What? No emotion in his voice, no slightest trace of excitement, not even some extra dialogue. He just don't care. And later when I found out book with Rothma rituals, I'm standing with my skelly friends that I just raised from death, and I let someone kidsplain to me basics of my craft. I even let a little girl to perform rituals of my order while I'm there for the whole time, and I'm not even interested in the damn book. What kind of Necro am I supposed to be? The one that hates his job? And finally, I witnessed Rothma's death. I even looked at his body. My Necro reacted to this. Impressive. Very nice. Let's pursue Lilith. It would be so simple to add some additional dialogue to make it more personal. This is so lame. This is lazy. Diablo 4 world is great. Skills are great. It feels and looks just right. Equipment has amazing, grim, dark vibes. And then I received this kind of lazy stuff in the campaign. Blizzard. For the love of high heavens. When you make half of an act about character that is important for a class, make it important. And you know what? I do agree with this. This is one thing that I absolutely agree. I remember playing as the Necromancer during the open beta. It just felt strange, particularly for the Necromancer. Now, I am curious to see what happens with the Druid. You got to remember that there's story beats specifically for the Druids when you hit Skosklen, and you'll be able to unlock further abilities there. But yes, I want to see how the Druid reacts there. They need to make sure that they have actual dialogue set for these key moments. So you could see your class in particular react to a specific situation that's kind of designated to that class. At least I think that would be really, really cool to see in the future. This is something they should keep in mind for the expansions for sure. But we got to take a look at this one right here. Let me know your opinion on it. Diablo 4 is shooting itself in the foot by not having two big quality of life features on launch. Let's get into this article right here. It does absolutely bring up some very good points, so check it out. It goes on to say this: the map overlay in action RPGs is something that the Diablo series is very familiar with, and it was largely successful because players prefer having a clear way to check the map that is not clicking on the same button over and over, periodically closing it after a few seconds. Now, games like Path of Exile found success with it for the same reasons, as players can even customize its opacity and possible icons that appear on it. Now, Diablo 4 could also include a map overlay too, but Blizzard was against it, and they currently are trying to find some sort of solution, but that solution, they say, is not going to be a map overlay. Currently, they don't want to clutter the screen over their beautiful artwork they have created. It's interesting. Whenever I go into a Path of Exile stream, I do see streamers with their big map overlay covering up the artwork, and I don't even know how you can tell what's going on sometimes. That's kind of the joke about Path of Exile, is like, I don't even know what's going on the screen. I'm just clicking like crazy. But yeah, it would be cool to see a map overlay at least as an option. So if you do want that option, I do think that you should have that. Now, the article goes on to say this: the main reason for this was that it ruins immersion in the game. While that may be true to a degree, players still need to look at the map from time to time to check where they are going, and having it pop up in a separate screen does pretty much the same thing. Now, Diablo 4's minimap is actually a very good one that could also be used by players to highlight the quickest path to a specific destination, removing the need to check the full-scale map, but it's not something that will be feasible at all times. You know, it's interesting. I'm torn with this one. I completely get where everyone's coming from. The dev team, where they're coming from, because if you work so hard on the artwork, man, just to cover it up. And then, of course, that feedback is so critical when exploring, especially some of those labyrinth-type dungeons, those complicated dungeons. You need that map overlay. Yeah, let me know if it's like a must-have feature. Now, next up, what's the other feature? It says, furthermore, Diablo 4's classes all share the same health pool, with only the resource pool different in color, name, and how it is spent and refilled, but they're only visible on both sides of the skill bar. This can be problematic for a specific reason, which is something that many ARPGs before Diablo 4 have struggled with, and it is that players would often rather keep their eyes on the character and the surrounding enemies. What follows is that having a small health and resource bar on top of the character model could be beneficial in making the gameplay feel smoother. You know, that could potentially be cool, but it could also clutter up, once again, the actual on-screen action. But yeah, would you guys like some UI feedback more near the character? Would that be easier for you to understand? I could potentially see that working out. But again, this stuff, if it is included in Diablo 4 down the road, it has to be highly customizable. You should be able to toggle it on, toggle it off, or just keep it by default how it is now currently. All right, furthermore, it goes on to say this right here: a big factor of Diablo 4's gameplay is using basic and core skills to generate and spend resource respectively, and then having several cooldown skills that can be used occasionally, often granting defensive boons or providing powerful attacks. These skills are visibly on cooldowns on the skill bar, but players are required to shift their attention from the middle of the screen to the skill bar and its sides during fights, and this can make some Diablo 4's powerful bosses even more difficult to handle. As such, after 6 years after its launch, Destiny 2 is learning the importance of conveying information where players are looking, and it's a lesson Diablo 4 would be wise to learn. Yeah, so in Destiny 2's new season, they've done some really interesting, fascinating stuff with UI based on player feedback. We'll see if Diablo 4 takes that route with, you know, actually improving the game. We'll have to see, of course, but right now I think the UI is in a pretty good place. I feel like there are some customization options. For example, you can move it to the left or in the center of the screen, regardless if you're on console or PC. There are tools that you can do that at the very least. All right, check it out right here. Yes, if we scroll down, here's my most recent video. Big Butcher teases new rewards leaked and new dev updates and more. Yeah, if you want to find out about those new rewards that have been leaked, check it out. There is a certain way where you can actually obtain those rewards, and that is by sitting in on some Twitch streams and doing some gifting. I think it's like $10 total, if I recall. Now, let's get into what you guys had to say about this one. So, Chuckles Play says, as a barb, there's a passive called Raid Leader on the 4th level of the skill tree. It allows for your shouts that can also boost movement speed to passively heal your allies for a percentage of their health. I used it during Shava, timing it for when she would leap away from the swarm of players. It definitely helped my group survive. Furthermore, he goes on to say this, read more. Plus, rotates safely and is highly recommended if you are a barb. So yeah, you know, this is in response to that PC Gamer article where they were kind of like ripping apart Diablo 4, especially the world boss encounter, and they were saying that there's no healer class. I think there are many different ways to buff and heal each other based on what you just see in the passives on the skill tree. It is definitely doable. So yeah, I was kind of like scratching my head over that one. Now, we have Frank, who goes on to say this, issues I see were people not preparing for the Ashava fight. If you stacked poison resist and used a poison elixir, as well as learn Ashava's attack patterns, you don't die. Even as a ranged character, there's no reason you can't stick closer to her rear to avoid the sweeps. ... And read more. I didn't have a problem killing Ashava 3 times with only max 8 random people in the fight. That's how you do it. You were with a really good group then, by the way. So that's awesome to note that that's actually possible. I mean, we have seen the world boss soloed. I think that's going to be a little bit more rare, of course. But yeah, it's good to note that it's possible to do with just only 8 people. All right, so what's next? Let's keep going. So we have Twiggy Skulls, who says Ashava isn't really that bad. The players just learn the mechanics. I also think they want to look for boots with plus evade charges, which will help tremendously with more evade opportunities, especially if you're being bullied by the boss. I did find those very boots. I think it was during the open beta, and dude, you are 100% correct about that. That helps you so much, especially during these world boss encounters, to get around a lot of the attacks, the surprise attacks I call them, especially the sweeping attack underneath Ashava's body. That's the one that always gets me. So having that extra evade was super important and critical when battling Ashava. Highly, highly recommend that in your world boss loadout for sure. All right, so we have Isaac, who goes on to say the following. He says, in my experience during the Ashava fight, I was invited to a group by randoms. I teleported back to town to repair my items. When I teleported back to the fight, I was in the same instance as my group, and we were able to defeat her. Yes, I believe I saw one of the devs mention how important it was to group up during the fight so you don't lose that instance. That's actually the key to not losing the instance, so you're 100% correct about that. So if you do end up in a group during an actual world boss fight, I believe it saves your instance, even if you teleport out for a moment to do your repairs. But yeah, I highly encourage everyone to try their best to kind of like stay in the fight, keep the damage going, you know, as you are battling the world boss. At least that's what I'm going to try to do. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned here for more Diablo 4 news and updates, and yes, open world gaming goodness. And I will see you all next time. Take care.